everyone. I'm Celia. I'm a digital strategist at Evolving Web, which is why I'm really excited to introduce you today to Allison Saunders. She is a digital content strategist at Concordia University. I'm really excited to hear from her today on her work on days and months of significance, basically about celebrating diverse voices, engaging a wide range of audiences, but I'll let her tell you more.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Celia. Hi, everybody. So I didn't time this, and it's a shortened version of a longer presentation, so let's see if we can get it done in 20 minutes with time for questions. But it's exciting to talk to you about all of this. So as Celia mentioned, my name is Allison. I'm a content advisor at Concordia University. And I'm going to talk to you today about how we bring days of significance to life online, from Black History Month to Jewish Heritage Month, Indigenous History Month, International Women's Day, and so many more. We're going to take a look at why these projects matter, how we plan and design them, and what we've learned along the way. So welcome. I will not try to pronounce the first top word, but it's from Mohawk, and it does mean our great minds meet yours. So today, I do want to acknowledge that I'm speaking from Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal, on the traditional and unceded territory of the Kanakahaga Nation, who are recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters. As a settler, I see that this work of digital storytelling and strategy is a part of my responsibility to learn, to reflect, and to help amplify Indigenous voices and knowledge in authentic and respectful ways. So in short, I'm going to show you how strategy and content intersects to create engaging digital experiences that don't just mark a day on the calendar, but make you think, make you talk, and help connect people across the university and beyond. Let's take a look. Kicking it off, it would have been May 2020, the murder of George Floyd led to a rise of a lot of social justice, social media actions. And many people were coming to me in my role at the university asking, how is Concordia going to participate in this movement? So, turning our avatar black, going Blackout Tuesday, these kinds of things. Certainly one way to do it, but not the only way. So my boss and I had a conversation about how, as the university, can we support these actions, but go beyond just performance, because throwing up your black avatar is one way, but there's many other things that you can do. So we wanted to show by doing. So many Concordians, faculty, staff, students, alumni are so engaged in all of the different things that are happening in our world, and social justice, education, commemoration, and in classrooms and hallways and event spaces. So again, how do we take those things and get them out into the viewpoint of other people? In my many, many years working as a digital content strategist and working in social media, I've learned what content works really well. And it's the stuff that's popular. It's stuff that we can connect to conversations that are already happening. Nobody cares about our initiative, and we want to tell you about it. So finding ways to connect our initiatives with things that people are already talking about was a really smart move on our part. So leveraging those days became a great way for us to share content about things that people were already talking about. My little video finished, so apologies. So working with the Concordia web team, so first we started with community first, not content first. Not what content are we going to put. Let's go talk to the community. So we're using Indigenous History Month as an example of how we build some of these pages. So those in the community, who are they? What kind of content would best serve them? They have to come from an authentic voice. I can't presume to understand or to know what other people want people to know about them. So my job is to work with people and figure out what is that voice that's missing and how can I do a job of highlighting it and presenting it. And also my job is working in comms, taking messages and getting them out in the world. Doing it this way is so gratifying because we get to move away from the traditional voices you already always hear in academia, and we get to include so many of the other people that make a part of our community. So working with the web team, we try to make sure that the pages look and feel great, that they're accessible, that they're inclusive. And so it's a really nice balance, I like to think, of educational depth with digital storytelling and some really nice, strong visuals. So before we get started, before we get to this, we have to plan. There's a little bit of strategy that is involved. So collaborations across our comms team, our design team, our studio team, everything from photography to documentation. We reached out to the equity office and then to our community. So fortunately for Indigenous History Month, we have the Indigenous Leadership Group. We also have a Indigenous Students Office. So we have a lot of voices that have a lot of knowledge that they can share with us and people we can work with. Content creation. What do we already have? What can we repackage to make into something for this particular month or day? Stories, we have artwork, we have interviews, we have video. There's so many things that can be added to our pages. And we have our editorial calendar and a cycle. So every year we know that this month is coming. So not that it's a rinse and repeat, but we're going to look and see what can we add, what do we need to take away, what really worked, what can we do a part 2 of, and again, making that content look even more awesome. So when we met with our Indigenous Leadership Group to talk about the very first page for Indigenous History Month in June, it was back in 2023, there was some resistance from that group for a couple of reasons. So one of them, June, there's really nobody on campus, so who are we doing this for? We already do a lot for September 30th, so how is this any different? Side note, little asterisk, how it's different for me, September 30th is very much a page about reflection of things that have happened in the past, right? And it's for us to do the work to learn. Indigenous History Month is a celebration of Indigenous culture. So while it certainly includes some of those darker pieces to it, but more in how we can move and advance those conversations in that, again, celebration and the lifting of voices. What else? We had a lack of, so people aren't around, we had no events that are planned, and then also limited capacity. It's summertime, no one's around. Who's building this? And just when you talk to people about building web content, who's going to do it? It's always the first thing. Side note, a lot of it's already done. A lot of it already exists. So a lot of it's a template. It's easy to create new, exciting content. And so we learned that we could, we didn't need physical events on campus to talk about Indigenous History Month. So when talking to them, we were able to come up with an idea of what we wanted to do. So we had a great meeting with them. The 2 leaders that we spoke to, they said, oh, this is really exciting. So you can acknowledge both those days, September 30th and Indigenous. Absolutely. Why would we only pick one? Of course we can do both. We don't have to host events. We can host events that Concordians are participating outside of the actual 4 walls of the university. So the Spirit Walk is organized by one of our alumni, or there's so many other things that are connecting the outside to the inside. There was a desire to highlight our alumni and professors who are, again, already had content on our site talking about the work that they were doing. We also talked timelines. It doesn't have to be ready for June 1st. It's nice to have something to acknowledge the day, but we can add to it, take away to it as things come and go. So we use, this is a back end, behind the curtain, but we use time boxes to turn things on, turn them off throughout the month as the content grows or changes. So in May, we were ready to get started on the first version of our page. Who are our audiences and stakeholders for pages like this? So they're diverse, right? It's internal, it's our students, our staff, our faculty, external audiences as well, including our Indigenous communities, a wider public, and the contributors, obviously, who are contributing to this. And so again, collaborating with all of those members was very important along every step of this way. And going back to what I said before about finding ways to highlight the work that's being done every day, as opposed to just those, that day of significance or that blackout Tuesday or whatever it is. This stuff is always happening. How do we find it? So beyond Indigenous History Month, you can see this is a short collection of the many that we've worked on. Each reflects a different community, different voices, different histories. We have video testimonials on them. Again, like I said, artwork, all kinds of different things. The designs are flexible. but the core is always authentic, always respectful, and again, always accessible. So I have great fun in trying to figure out what content's going on it, how it's going to look. I work with our web designer who's amazing, does really great work. Again, picking strong visuals and really just drawing people in from the minute that they hit the page. This was the very first page that we launched back in 2023. So again, as I mentioned, it's just a mix of formats. We've got some video on here, etc. And again, using those time boxes to add and take away content as it became available. Go back. This was another piece that we added. You could link off of that main page to land on a really nice page for Indigenous faculty members. And as you can see, this isn't content about Indigenous History Month. So it lives on that page, but I can tell you we have reused many of these videos in many different contexts, talking about all of the different things that people are talking about. Like entrepreneurship in Indigenous communities doesn't have to live just in June when we talk about that, right? It can always be highlighted. They live on YouTube. Got them on YouTube. They live on Instagram as well. We have them on our social media platforms. Again, encouraging people to share them beyond to the page to get the messages out. And again, it's evergreen content. We always include a book list with movies or TV shows or just other resources people can follow. So for most pages, there's a book list, working with the Concordia libraries to come up with that list. One of the really fun things, after hearing from one of our Indigenous leaders that, well, we don't have any content for June, she was like, you know what would be really cool? How about an Indigenous language guide? Just quick pronunciations on how you say hello, how you say mom, how you say dad. And so she went and worked on that, talked with her language experts, and so on the page it links out to a really just this table. It's nothing fancy, but again, that evergreen content that we can add to, we can turn it to video. There's the possibilities are endless, what we can do with that. Tying it back to September 30th, we had a conversation internally about Orange Shirt Day in September 2025 and what it can look like this year, and how do we encourage the community at Concordia to wear orange at their meetings on campus, etc. And so adding it on the page in June, teasing out the idea that in September we want you to consider wearing orange. Learn more about the day, why it's important. That's a hyperlink to go learn more about it, and then tying it to other Indigenous days of significance, because there are many others as well. So what are some of the lessons learned? What worked, what didn't? Of course, community first, flexible timelines. Again, it doesn't all have to be ready at the start of the month. Shared ownership. Again, deciding where this content lives. So sometimes we just point to it from that main page. Sometimes it lives within that space. So again, these are some of the conversations that we have. Some of the things that are a little bit challenging, I will add, are balancing what the institution wants us to do versus what the community is telling us they want or need. And then also too, I work not just in digital space, but working in equity and diversity and inclusion and all of that. That's that push and pull between institutional voices and community and cultural voices. I think we do a good job of honoring each other in those conversations, but it's led to some interesting outcomes. So one of them, just quickly, we had a news feed on the page. So anything that was tagged Indigenous research would show up in this feed. And we learned just because an Indigenous researcher may not be doing Indigenous research. So it doesn't necessarily make sense that story would appear amongst next to a story of an Indigenous researcher who's doing Indigenous research. Then you have the non-Indigenous research who's doing research, and so it gets really complicated. So it led to us to figure out what is a better way of us tagging our stories and our content so that it's not so much manual lifting. If it shows up in a feed, it makes sense, and that our Indigenous leaders are okay with the things that we as the institution are calling Indigenous research. Anyway, very long and complicated for nothing, but a little side note. What made this really exciting too was that Indigenous History Month page won a case award. And so the judges, when they gave us the feedback, they said that they didn't just see a digital page, they saw purpose, they understood why it was created, they praised how we worked with the community to create these pages, they loved the depth of the stories, that they were respectful, that they were strategic, and they loved the way that we created this site. In their words, the site elevated Indigenous voices in a deeply meaningful way. And again, that kind of feedback reminds us that good digital storytelling isn't just about design, how it looks, but how we put it together and what the final outcome looks like. So a few things you can take back to your teams when you're creating pages like this, or if you'd like to start. You need to know your audience, right? And know how to co-create with them. There's protocols, and sometimes it's not always easy. But once you figure it out, and we all want the same things at the end of the day, and opening those conversations, especially with communities that often didn't feel they had a voice within the institution, it's always so rewarding when you start having those conversations. And it's so cool to see, again, what comes from the community. I mean, it's connecting, it's that authentic part, and that's the best way to sell a message, right? Is to connect it authentically. Plan year-round, so don't wait till May to start planning for June. Again, we have the calendar, we know, and so we start strategically thinking out, okay, so and such dates coming up, what is going to be our digital plan? So it's not always a page like the one I showed you for Indigenous History Month. Sometimes it's just a contained image that we share on social media. A good example would be for September 6th, where for the last decade, we've always just listed the names of the victims and just we remember. So again, but always again thinking, and so when December comes, I'm going to start thinking in October, what's the design of that going to look like? How are we going to share it? What's it going to say? How's it going to be different? So you want to plan in advance as much as you can. You also want to keep accessibility and inclusivity at the start. It's easier to build it in than to add it after. So you want to again start thinking as you're building your pages what they're going to look like. And again, using these pages to center the voices, not necessarily the institution. I think that was another thing that people really resonate with our pages. There you go. We're at the end. Did I do it? Did I do it? I did it with time to spare. Excellent. So that's you feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, ask me anything. I'm always happy to answer them. If you go on concordia.ca/events/days of significance, you'll see the list that I showed in the beginning of all of the dates that should be hyperlinked to the current pages. Actually, I did get to the end. I do have one more thing to add. It was on a slide, just kind of small. I didn't address it, and that's about trolls. So the one thing that I didn't talk about, but I will just add quickly, when we started these projects, part of it was for that, how does Concordia become a part of the public conversations around those social justice issues? And that was that social media need. Secondly, for certain things, we light our buildings. So if someone's walking down the street and sees our building as orange, often they want to know why. So we would make sure it was on social media, or you could go on our website and a little link to learn more about Orange Shirt Day, Black History Month, whatever. And now, though, budgets and life and things, and it's been a few years, and so the public displays are fewer and fewer. And so our activities are kind of becoming, not that we're not doing them, but they're much more central. And so we do still share all of this great content, but just not in that super public way anymore, because what we were finding are the people who really have a problem with it will go and spam you, and they'll ask you all kinds of great decolonization. When you start talking about that in the engineering, for example, some of the things people say about it are pretty awful and terrible. I don't have time to go and delete comments from people who aren't a part of my community, right? If that comment came from a Concordian, then that's a very different conversation, and how we deal with it is going to look different, right? And so managing that public discourse around some of this woke stuff, we choose not to so much. Not again that we're hiding it, we're not. It's just it's not going to be on our Twitter account so much anymore. Yeah. Now I'm done. Any questions? Yes.
How do you think about how different to make a message for an annual day, year to year? This morning I was walking around and I saw memorials and statues that were, I think, well over 100 years old, and it occurred to me, whoever put that up 100 years ago doesn't have to think each year when the appropriate day comes around, oh, what do we say this year? And we have that challenge with the internet, partly because we can say something different each year. But should we say something different each year?
Well, so again, it's that authenticity, right? So what is it that we're saying? I want to always make sure that what I'm saying resonates well with the community that I'm saying it about, right? And history, you're right, it changes, and the narratives change, and right, it's what they say, history is the narrative of the victor. And so again, in the world, these are those push and pulls. Some of it is outlined in the articles that you'll find on the page. That might be an interview that we have with someone that works in records management about what does it look, I had a great conversation, this would be a good one, I should go ask her. I had a great conversation with a woman that works in record management about YouTube, and what do we do with video or clips that now are controversial, right? How do we label them? Do they need a trigger warning? Who knows? It's hard to say. So again, I said to her, take that to the archive people. That's a great question for the librarians of the world to be looking at. Anyway, I'm going around and around. But the answer is, I think it's important to every year take a look at what is your message? What are you saying? Does it still resonate? Is it still current? I'll give you a good example. I had the word manpower in this presentation. I took it out, right? I updated it for 2025. We don't say manpower, it's people power, right? But resources, call them resources instead. Any other questions? Yes?
You were talking about that balance between being authentic to the community and the institution. How do you navigate that? Because I think about like Pride right now, there's a lot of conversation around pinkwashing and Pride, and it's that at one time was just I feel like it was a very safe bet. It was you can just celebrate Pride, but I don't think that's the case anymore. So how do you navigate that?
Very gingerly and difficultly. And so part of the reason why we're moving away from that those big public displays and social media, putting it out there. So they become a little bit more internal conversations. Pride is always, it's a little bit anecdote. Pride has always been really interesting at Concordia because Quebec doesn't celebrate Pride in June like everywhere else in Canada does. For us, it's August for whatever reason, right? And so for the longest time, we would just just not talk about it in June because it's not our Pride. and then in August, we would do a pay and celebrate what Concordians were doing around it, right? So again, pulling in editorials, asking a researcher who's looking into pinkwashing and maybe getting them to do an op-ed that hopefully maybe will appear in out in a newspaper, in which case then we will republish it on our site, right? So it's conversation, it's figuring out what makes sense, when it makes sense, how it makes sense. We didn't do a Pride page this year, but we had a page for the International Day Against Biphobia, transphobia, biphobia, and I can't remember. There's a third. Biphobia, thank you. I didn't want to use the acronym because it's terrible, so I was trying to avoid it. Go ahead.
Have there been students that have said anything about the fact that there's no more Pride at Concordia? Anything said about Pride during the month of August?
So not particularly, because again, so I'm sitting at the top where I am, I'm the institutional, right, voice. So students don't typically really know what we're saying or care what we're saying unless we go out of our way to figure out how to tell them what we're doing. So there are still things that are happening on campus. Queer Concordia is still very active. So it's not like Pride doesn't exist. It's just that institutionally, we don't necessarily make a public statement about it. Although I said, so we're not doing necessarily these big social media pushes or making these big pages. We have newsletters that go out to our students, our faculty, staff, alums. Within those newsletters, we'll add links to stories or our editorials and articles and things to keep those conversations going. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. How do you navigate tension between conflicting communities? I see you had Jewish Heritage Month, you have Islamophobia movement. I'm a Concordia alumni and a McGill alumni, so wondering how, as a community manager, you handle both Concordia populations.
It's an excellent question, and we do it very gingerly. And so again, we try not to be reactionary, and we want to be thoughtful. But I will tell you, last year, May is Asian Heritage Month, and so we had a page for that as we had the year before, and it was probably the last week of May where a few alums, I think they spoke to each other and they sent a bunch of email to the university saying, hey, did you know that May is also Jewish Heritage Month? What are you doing for us? You have a week. I'm like, well, thanks for the challenge, guys. So, because we're awesome, we did turn something around, and there was something available last year. And then this year for May, there was a much more involved page for Jewish Heritage Month. But those ones are difficult, and I'm going to add, some of them are difficult because, so Indigenous History Month, we have an Indigenous Leadership Group. We have an Indigenous Student Center. Like, I know who to talk to. Black History Month, I'm Black. I can go talk to Nula. I can go, like, it's easy. Jewish Heritage, like, there's no, who is the person that owns that idea, right? Really difficult. Lucky for us, we have an equity office, and they are the ones who are that manage communities and those community conversations. And so when we respond to people saying, you have a week, what are you doing for us? Well, we'll work with them to come up with the right response and then figure out what we are doing. So sometimes it's we'll build a page. Sometimes it's, we're not going to build a page, but this event is happening and it's specifically for your community, or it's this, or it's that. So conversations, never hiding why you're doing what you're doing, making sure it's connected really and rooted and centered in really real stuff too. Don't just do it just to do it. Like, I think it's important. We're time.
Now they're at time.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you everybody for that. I hope it was interesting. You enjoyed it. Thank you.